Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. Moksha Hiremat shares something with you. Modernity in literature is inevitable, but the blend of modernity and tradition is very important. In the name of modernity, we cannot throw away all the good things and deeds of the tradition. There are so many things which are healthy, wealthy, and helpful for the growth of human beings. Such things should be retained. Of course, Indians are always for it. It cannot be said of others other than Indians. Kannada literature is not an exception to this. We can see it in the modern Kannada literary period. The modern Kannada literary period begins from approximately 1910 of Common Era. But we can trace the seeds of it are shown in the 19th century itself, in the missionary period itself. But it is blossomed in the first part of the 20th century. So we can trace it from 1910 onwards up to 1960s. The modern Kannada literary period consists two streams of Kannada literature. One is Navodaya and another one is Pragatisila. One is of new age and another one is of progressive writers. These two streams are inevitable in the Kannada literary period. The new age, called Navodaya in Kannada literature, has been influenced by English literature, especially Romanticism of English literature has influenced more the New Age period of Kannada literature. Of course, poets of English literature such as Wordsworth, T.S. Eliot, Bertrand Russell, Byron have influenced these New Age writers. The New Age writers, that is Navodaya writers, are yielded to nature, yielded to common life. They were the part and parcel of the nature and of the people and of traditions. We have many stalwarts in the Navodaya Kannada literary periods. I can quote the names of B.M. Sri, Kuvempu, Dara Bendre, Shivram Karant, Poti Nrsimhachar, Vikru Gokak, Samsa, T.P. Kailasam, Sriranga, Anakru, Tarasu, Basavaraj Kettimani, and Niranjana. These are some of the stalwarts of the modern Kannada literary period. These writers and poets had created their own niche in the history of Kannada literature. They have shown their skill in the field of poetry as well as prose. They were good writers and composers of the novels and poems. They showed their skill in translation, in poems, in epic poems, in novels, and in dramas. Of course, some of the writings of these stalwarts are landmark even today. B.M. Sri's English Geetegalu is famous. B.M. Sri, a pioneer of the modern Kannada literary period, translated some of the classical English poems into English, and he titled it as English Geetegalu. It is such a translation that is, you cannot feel it is a translation. That is the uniqueness of B.M. Sri. B.M. Sri said that it is the translation, so we feel that it is the translation. If B.M. Sri didn't say it is a translation, automatically we feel that these are the poems composed by B.M. Sri himself. But B.M. Sri was an honest. He was committed to sincerity and poetic justice. So, he showed his skill in translation. He dedicated it to the original poems and poets. Of course, the translation English Geetegalu is the blend of modernity and tradition. Kuvempu's Ramayana Darshanam is an epic poem which portrays or which looks at Ramayana from a different angle of life. Of course, he got it Jnanapita Prasasti for that epic poem. Dara Bendre was a gifted poet. And Dara Bendre used the common people's language in his poetry. His collections such as Gari, Aralu Maralu, and Nakutanti are famous. He also got Jnanapita Award for his work, Nakutanti. Kuvempu was not only a poet, an epic writer, but he was also a novelist. His two novels, especially the Kanuru Subbamma Yaghadati and Malagadalli Madumogalu, are landmark in the history of Kannada literary novels. These novels have been translated into English also. It is the Yaggadati of Kanuru and the Bride Hills and etc. And Shuram Karant was a rebellion in the nature. Even though he was a rebellion in the nature and by instinct, he was a traditionalist in the sense he stood for the growth of humanity and he stood for growth of the development. Of course, first and foremost, he was a novelist. His novels such as Chomana Dudi, Marali Mandige, Mukajjiya Kanasugalu, and etc. are very famous. He was also awarded with Jnanapita Prasasti for his Mukajjiya Kanasugalu. And another piece of writing, Kutsu Manasina Hattu Mukagalu, is also popular. Vikru Bokak's epic poem Sindhu Rashmi is an important one. And of course, we have the dramatists of that period also, especially the people's dramatist Samsa, who wrote Vigada Vikramaraya, and T.P. Kailasam's Tollugetti and other plays, and Sriranga, who is famous for his Indian theatre, the translation of Bharata Natya Shastra and Indian theatre. And of course, the plays of Sriranga are like the plays of Bernard Shaw of English literature. So, Adyarangacharya, that is Sriranga, is considered as the Bernard Shaw of Kannada literature. After these classical writers, we have seen the progressive writers, and they don't give that much of importance to the nature and other things, but they are dwelt on mundane life. And we can mention the names of Anakru, Tarasu, Basuraj Kittimani, and Niranjana. Anakru's Sandhyaragam, Tarasu's Durgastamana, Basuraj Kittimani's Madimadidawaru, and Niranjana's Chirasmarane and Mrutyunjaya are very important. These writers have their own things. They exhibited their own personality with a blend of tradition and modernity. They welcomed modernity with love and affection without affecting the tradition of that time or of the time immemorial. Of course, the modern Kannada literary period has these characteristics. They are modern with the tradition. They are loved and liked the nature. They used the standard language of Kannada, which can be understood everywhere in Karnataka and on other parts of India and etc. And they did what they said and they wrote what they said and it did. That is the speciality of these New Age writers. That is the speciality of Navodaya and progressive writers. Most of the writers become the face of others, but not their nature. But that is not the characteristics of these New Age writers, Navodaya writers. They are translated many works into English, especially translators and poets like B.M. Sri Kantaya contributed a lot to the development of Kannada literature. And some writers of that period thought that what the Romantics did was not that much of correct. They did not project the modernity and progress properly. That is why they, to a little extent, revolted that trend of these stalwarts and they started the progressive writers movement. That is Pragatisila Chalavali, progressive movement, Pragatisila Chalavali. They themselves claimed it as a progressive movement. Anna Crew led the movement, literary movement. And of course, they wrote for the common people. They become mouthpiece of the common people's day-to-day earthly life, and they were against the exploitation, and almost all of them are left oriented. But of course, they started their progressive movement in 1940s. It is ended shortly. It is gone up to 1950 and there it is faded out gradually. Again, the Romantic period has begun. And of course, it is gone to the extent of 1960. Like this, these stalwarts have their own sayings and they express their thoughts and feelings in a finer taste, and the people, that is the readers, are attracted to them because they did and wrote what they said. They were traditionally blended people. They followed the four ashramas, that is Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa ashrama properly. And they led the life of saintliness. They are for spiritual love. Sometimes it is also called platonic. But of course, Indian spiritual love is entirely different from platonic love. So, like this, these poets and writers of the New Age Navodaya period, that is the modern Kannada literary period, have contributed a lot to Kannada literature. Even today, Kannadigas read their works with interest and commitment. When we read their works, we feel that we have not given up the Indian tradition and also not rejected the modernity. In their works, we can see the fine blending of modernity and tradition. Of course, it is Indian tradition. In olden Kannada literary periods, we also seen it. Whether it is pre-old Kannada, Jaina's literary period, Veerashaiva's literary period, Vedic literary period, and missionary period, we have seen it. So that makes the Indian writers and especially Kannada writers different from other writers in the world. That is why Kannada writers have got 8 Jnanapita awards, which is highest in India. Of course, Kannada writers have also got Kannada Fellowship and Academy Award in a big number. Like this, Kannada writers are the combination of modernity and tradition. So, they are at the time of Indian freedom movement, and in addition to the influence of Wordsworth, Bernard Shaw, not Bernard here exactly, Bernard Shaw of course, P.C.B.C. Shelley and Byron, and of course the famous Indian freedom fighter and the non-violent struggler Mahatma Gandhi. So they became the face of the Indian freedom struggle. So they spread the spiritual love with the non-violent method and truth. Not only one or two writers, but almost all writers of this modern Kannada literary period have done it. That is the speciality of modern Kannada literary period. So, from this point of view, modern Kannada literary period becomes a landmark in the history of Kannada literature. Subscribe and share. See you in the next episode. Namaskar.